Hi, I'm Dennis Weiss. Welcome to our town. We're at our favorite place in Abilene, Kansas, and that's the Eisenhower Presidential Library Museum today and Boyhood Home. We have the iconic picture of Dwight David Eisenhower talking to troops before D-Day, one of my favorite photographs. My guest today, Alan LaPolice, is a candidate for the big 1st District congressional seat as an
independent.
Do you think there was an independent or two standing up there?
I know there was.
Yeah.
My understanding of Eisenhower's decision to run, Truman initially asked him to run as a Democrat, and no one really could tell if he was going to run D or R. And in the end, he went R because it was more in line with his principles and his values, but it was a surprise to old Truman when he did that.
Yeah.
So,
you know, I don't know. I think I was very first registered as an independent in Colorado, where I grew up. Then I registered as a Republican. But I have to tell you, and anybody that's standing behind the camera over there will probably be able to swear to this, I'm a pretty independent guy. I mean, I just like to decide what I think about the world myself, then find somebody who matches up with it as a candidate or as a business partner or as an idea generator. I just believe right's right and wrong's wrong and go with that. So we've had you here before. Glad to have you back. The general election's around the corner from us.
coming up.
So tell us how you got through the primary season, why you're on the ballot as an independent, and let's get started talking about the future.
Well, to reaffirm the idea of independence, I mean, our nation was started with the Declaration of Independence. It was started by rebels and radicals and men and the women that supported those men saying we were going to be independent of a tyrannical government and of oppressive laws and rules that didn't work for our independent sensibilities. Mm-hmm. First presidents, you know, George Washington, he didn't have a party. There were no partisans back then. They were just patriots. And the founders of this country, they were all independents, and many of them feared a two-party system or a party system in general. My favorite founding father, James Madison, deeply feared the idea of partisan politics that could jeopardize the sovereignty or the true nature of our particular brand of democracy, our constitutional republic. So me being independent, it makes perfect sense. Now my decision came on the heels of the presidential primaries, mm-hmm. when you had the parties revealing to the voters that they genuinely didn't care what they thought. On the Democratic side, you had the superdelegates and the rigging of the election. And mm-hmm. with those recent email scandals, we know it was rigged. Mm-hmm. And on the Republican side, you had state caucuses or state primaries where they actually suspended the vote and they said, we're going to decide for you. Mm-hmm. So the establishment on both sides have revealed their love of a duopoly. They work hand in hand to ensure that they keep control over elections, and they work really hard to keep voters from having access to people like myself, independents, or people that side with one set of values but don't adhere to dogma or ideology. And that's me. I don't adhere to their ideology.
You know, Alan, I think the primary season has clearly shown us that within the electorate, too, is a deep resentment of establishmentism, if you will.
Sure.
My middle daughter, Kaylee, who I'm very proud of, is in Washington State, and we're complete ends of the spectrum politically. Mm-hmm. So 99% of our conversations about politics are arguments, right? Polite arguments, but arguments nonetheless. So I sent her this link to a story off of the news, and I sent it to all my kids, and she's the one who responded. And it really was about, so what do you think about Google and these searches being modified for terms to bring up candidates that a certain group prefers versus not? And her response was illuminating. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and she said, we saw this during our primary season. We know it's real. And now we've seen it in the news with the email scandal. Well, I don't believe the American population's well served by thumbs on the scales of elections.
I mean, it's antithetical to what we believe in. I mean, we believe in liberty and we believe in justice. And our nation was founded on these principles of the ability to self-govern through knowledge of policies and of candidates. The greatest defense against tyranny is a well-educated public. And when we don't hear from different voices, when the voters don't get to choose from a bigger selection or a bigger pool of candidates, then it's just antithetical to liberty. In my particular case, I'd mentioned before we started that every election cycle, the state fair does the debates, and they host these debates. They're very informative, and it's a great place for the voters and the viewers and the people to understand the policies of the people they're about to vote for.
Right.
And they made the decision not to allow me to debate the primary nominee.
Okay.
Based on some arbitrary rules that they had, which, by the way, I'd met those rules. But they still thought, well, you're independent, and there's no chance that you're going to win. I like that you're thumb on the scale. You're making the decision for the voter before the voter has a say, and that is wrong on every level. And in the end, they decided to just pull the debate altogether, pull the forum, and they're going to take their ball. They're going to go home.
Well, we at Eagle, we do this every year, that there's an election, whether it's local or anything else. We always invite people to come sit in front of the cameras. This program's called Our Town. We're pretty passionate in Abilene with our history of Dwight David Eisenhower, that leadership matters. We just give people a chance to sit down. You were the first one that's replied back to me and said, I'd like to talk to you about the general election. So remind people who you are, what your background is, and why you're running for this office.
Sure. In brief, Alan LaPolice. I am a fifth-generation Kansas-born farmer, and I truly am a farmer. I hobby farm now. I don't try to say that I make my primary income from the farm operations, but I did grow up every day milking cows, twice a day, every single day. I grew up, by the time I was 10, I was already driving these big grain trucks, little bitty me, driving grain trucks on an open cab swather with, all these sickles and blades and just all.
And you have all your fingers.
I kept all my digits.
There you go.
I got stung up by a lot of wasps and sweat bees, and it created the man that I am today, someone with a very strong work ethic, someone who values principles and labor and industrial, I guess, work. I grew up on this farm. When I was 17, I joined the Army. I served in the first Gulf War, as I mentioned before. I was infantry. I was in the largest tank battle in American history. Proudly served there, and then I served at the National Training Center in the Mojave Desert, where I trained American soldiers on how to fight desert campaigns. And after that, I moved around in the private and public sector, ultimately landing on education. And I only recently left an education job at Cloud County Community College to take up this campaign full time. My campaign is genuinely to represent working class Americans, middle class Americans, the voters who don't have a voice in Congress because they're too busy working, they're too busy laboring to stop doing what they're doing and run for Congress. And we don't have nearly enough of those.
I kind of think maybe you're still a middle of the road guy. You know why?
Why is that?
Because I saw across the beautiful parking lot, the grounds this morning, it looks like you drove up in a red Chevy.
No, it was a Ford.
It's a Ford? Okay, then I guess you're more consistent. Because I know the last time I talked to you, you were in an old blue Ford.
It was, yeah. At the time, I had this, that 90 F-150 was my city truck.
Okay.
This is my 95 F-150,
okay.
which is my work truck.
And this is general election truck.
This is the hauling the cattle to the vet truck, but I gave away the gray one because she was starting to clunk out. So now I take the red.
Oh, there goes my line, but it was still. I said that's not him because that's not his truck.
No, that was me. Well, gray used to be my campaign truck, and I would put the banners on the side and hang some balloons. But now it's red, and she's got a lot of rust.
Okay, well I'm going to say something, and we're going to talk about farming.
Okay.
I couldn't give a hoot if you grew up on a farm or not. And I grew up on a farm. So,
okay.
And you probably don't care whether I grew up on a farm or not. Here's what I do care about. If you've got a brain about farm policy and how it provides security to our nation or not, and you're willing to argue that point in a hearing that's really about social subsidies, not farming.
Sure.
because that's what the Farm Bill is in modern America. It's less than 20% Farm Bill, and the rest is all about the food program,
Sure.
SNAP, and all the other stuff. How do we truly send an advocate that can talk about the security of farming in the language of Dwight David Eisenhower? How do we do that? And are you that guy?
Yeah, yes, sir, I am. You know, the only way to do it is to send, and this might be self-serving, but there's no one that can win a Republican election and then have I don't know, have the credibility to bring Democrats on board to sign legislation that's vital to national security, like ag policy, like, you know, food production. Mm-hmm. And there's no one on the Democratic side that's going to be able to do the same. And that's what has created this partisan gridlock, and because no one has credibility. Now, until we send someone that can break that duopoly, someone that has credibility on both sides, who speaks to both those Democratic voters, those Republican voters, and those independent voters, until that person has the ability to get the members of Congress to listen to them, because they don't listen. There's no listening going on. Until we can send that person, they're gonna shut you down. The committees are gonna be just, you know, the R's over here with their ideas and the D's over here, and there's intransigence. There's the inability to collaborate for what's good for the nation. So until someone, you can say as a Republican, I'm gonna reach across the aisle, but that's never happened, not in the past 20 years. Mm-hmm. But as an independent, I can go there and I can speak ag policy in an educated and informed way to where I can convince them that this is a vital national security interest. And I'm not about subsidies. My primary ag policy, the top of the list isn't the crop insurance. Now, a safety net is necessary, but the top of my list is good trade policy, good, solid economic trade policy that guarantees pricing for, guarantees buyers for these ag producers in a global market. That's trade policy. And then the next, there's water security. I'm addressing the Ogallala and guaranteeing that it's a sustainable activity for America. And then I start to talk about the safety net. But I also talk about technology. This isn't a subsidy when you're incentivizing higher yield crops, when you're incentivizing drought-tolerant crops or disease-tolerant crops. So my ag policy, I can convince others to vote for, because it's not just a farm subsidy. It's or a food subsidy for the food stamp recipients. It's good policy that everyone can buy into.
Anybody that shows up here and sits in the seat with me for the general election is going to have to put up with this because the camera's on. But so there was a line in a primary campaign that said this candidate, X candidate, would deliver for Kansas, and I almost broke the radio out of my car.
Yeah.
We're Kansans. We are Midwestern people.
Yeah.
Our expectation should not be that we're going to send somebody to Washington, D.C. to bring something back for us. We produce everything we need here. We might want to keep more of it ourselves.
Sure.
But Kansans have fed the world since the end of the Dust Bowl. We don't need to produce for Kansas. We need the just chance to produce for the world, and let us sell it at market prices and open up the playing field and have enough courage of your convictions to stand for it, and we'll be fine.
I agree. I got into a dispute more than once, actually, where people will ask, and they'll just to my face. In Abilene, maybe 6 months ago, we had a debate, and one of the final questions they said is this was being put on by the Abilene Farm Bureau, or the County Farm Bureau, and they said, "What can you do for the Farm Bureau, for our county Farm Bureau?" And I honestly answered the question, nothing. I mean, and that didn't sit well. And I went on to explain, I go to a lot of these meetings, or I go to a lot of boards, or I go to some ethanol, or if I go talk to the sorghum growers, or if I go talk to the construction workers, and they say, "What can you do for us?" Well, nothing that I'm not going to do for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And if we send a congressman that says, "I'm going to do what's best for my district," and 434 other districts send a congressman who's going to do what's best for their district, well, then they're all going to go to this big mashup thinking, how do I get mine? And that's not the right narrative. How do we get ours as a nation? Yeah. How do we collaborate on the Hill to do what's in the best interest of the nation? And again, ag security is in the best interest of the nation.
I cannot sit in this room with this man's picture behind me and know the history of what Dwight David Eisenhower did during not only World War II, but as he served the displaced persons at the end of the war in Europe and created a whole new way of treating after conflicts for the world to see, and then went into civilian leadership as president, and not say, how do we get back to speaking the courage of our convictions and acting on that instead of negotiating for power and position?
The answer is in the question. It's courage. Elections have become a game. It's a zero-sum game. Elections have become grown men and women that are desperate to hold on to that power, and they're afraid. Their biggest fear isn't failure to deliver policy. Their biggest fear is failure to win re-election. And you get someone that never loses, and all they're going to do is just try to keep winning. Well, you don't win as an individual. You win as a collective. You win as a society. And my biggest ace in the hole is that I ran 2 years ago unafraid of losing. The polls said I would never win. They said I wouldn't even get into 30%, and I got 45%. I went in knowing that there's a remarkably good chance that I could lose, but I was unafraid to lose. And when I placed as well as I did, I realized I did more than I expected. I proved that somebody like myself, a working class, honorable citizen legislator, citizen attempted legislator, could win and serve. Anybody that goes in there and wins off the bat, they're immediately going to start campaigning again so that they can hold on to that power. Give up the idea that you have that power. You don't. The individual legislator doesn't have that power. Collectively, as a nation, as a bunch of patriots, we have power.
I have a great hope that through our efforts at Eagle Communications, just by Dave setting that camera up and me being willing to ask questions, however inartfully I might do it, is the fact that the public gets a chance to hear from people and see who they are on camera, because you don't hide much from a camera. The camera tells the truth of who the person is over there sooner or later if they subject themselves to it long enough without a teleprompter. So here we are, and as you look into the campaign, I think I said this in a different way before the camera came on. My greatest hope for you as a candidate, I hope you do well as a candidate. I mean, I like candidates who come and will try and do well. I think that for everybody. But my hope's for my 16-year-old son who hasn't voted yet, that through these kinds of efforts, he will see what American politics are and hopefully form a vision of what they should be, and sometime in the next few years affect change in our culture.
Change is desperately needed, and one of the biggest platform pieces, and I've explained this before, but one of the most critical pieces of hopefully any candidate's platform is to restore trust. Because without the trust in the governance and without the trust in those legislators that they send to represent us, without that, you get apathy, you get non-participation, and you get people that firmly believe that it's rigged. And the vast majority of people that I talk to, they acknowledge it's rigged. And it is rigged when the simple outcome of any race is he who spends the most money. Now, I've got no problem with someone acquiring funds and resources to run a campaign, but that shouldn't be the only metric. It should be message. And I have a distinct message in my campaign, I always have, but I don't have the money. So until people can start to realize, no, the process that we have is that we elect the best candidate based on what their message is and how they hope to achieve that message. And until that happens, until someone like myself, and this may sound self-serving, but until someone like myself can win in an election and restore that trust that those people, they're us, and those legislators represent us. Until that happens, people are going to assume it's bought. You mentioned Sanders. Sanders didn't go for corporate money. Sanders didn't go for that big money. He went the other way, and he got millions of these small donations. So he was going outside of the system that everybody knows is the way you win. And even though he did that, they rigged it. I mean, they pulled it from him. And the DNC, they made it clear that it doesn't matter that you're going to take the conventional route of if you have more money, you can stand a chance. And they pulled the rug out from under him. And so again, that reaffirms our notion that it's rigged. So until someone can win it on in an honorable way, based on message, people are going to just continue to believe it's not for them.
I would agree with you. I think for hope to be restored, somebody has to win an honest election. That's not extraordinarily influenced by how much we spend. Dave, you'll pull a wide shot again on the picture behind us. You said restore trust.
Yeah.
I was filming, I think, with Carl Weisenbach here in his office, and we didn't have this big picture, but we had this picture, the same picture on a small format in the room, and we were commenting about it. And you know, there's a lot of debate about what was being said in that picture. The facts are it's Dwight David Eisenhower, and facts are it's just before the launch of D-Day, and the other fact set is those are the men who were getting on the boats. All right, that's all established fact. History tells us through oral history tells us that Eisenhower was talking about his favorite fly fishing to these people. That was one of the things that was said. And you know, when I was first told that, it made me think that's an attempt to cheapen it. I've said this before. One of the greatest leaders the world has ever known, two men who knew what they were about to do, wasn't to go fly fish, but many times just expressing confidence as a leader. You're establishing trust as a leader. That Dwight David Eisenhower standing there having a conversation about fly fishing with men who are about to go give the ultimate sacrifice on the beaches of Normandy.
Do you know which of these men survived that invasion? Do you know how many of these
I could
people?
point to several of them, but no, I couldn't. Everyone.
But he knew this man was a leader, and he knew that he's asking these men to go into battle. And I can tell you from firsthand account, it is petrifying having to go into battle because you stand a distinct chance of not coming back. You stand a chance of never seeing your loved ones again. So this guy, this leader, he had to convince them to trust that he was going to protect them and to lead them into battle. And right now, no political leader has that because they don't try. They don't sit there and talk with them face to face about fly fishing because they don't know how. They don't know how to relate. They only know how to say the catchphrases or those sound bites that are going to get them to cast the lever in the ballot box for them. And that's why it's gone. That's why that kind of trust is gone. And until we bring that back, until we can get the American people to follow the lead of their leaders, we're going to have division and we're going to have a bankrupt nation.
Let me ask you about one policy thing, because we only have 2 minutes left. Talked about foreign policy. That's big in Kansas elections. I think the other thing that's factually big that everybody has some concern about is regulation.
Sure.
And in Kansas, we're sitting on the edge of being able to not produce enough electricity, even for Kansas, because we haven't been able to put up a new power plant in a long time.
Right.
The Sunflower Power Plant has been shut down. That expansion has been killed numerous times.
Holcomb too.
Yes. So what position do you have when it concerns regulation about producing power and ensuring the ability of the farmer to farm and people to use power in their house?
When I talk about domestic national security, I always talk about ag security, but I also talk about energy security. And right now we rely too heavily on foreign oil. So if we can get off of that, if we can create a regulatory system that enhances our ability to produce, to generate the electricity that we need to be productive as a society, as an economy, when we can do that, then we're guaranteeing that kind of security. So in the regulatory agencies, I'll say this: we all know that people will criticize the executive, the president, and saying he's not doing his job or he's doing too much of his job. There's a balance somewhere in there. And with Congress, everyone will agree that they're not doing their job at all, correct? Congress has oversight over all the agencies, the regulatory agencies, all of them. They do have oversight. They have not only power of the purse, but they have oversight in the sense that they can bring them in and have committee hearings and tell them what their job is. But when Congress can't have those committee hearings, when they can't agree on what those committee hearings should look like, and when they sit there, again, intransigent, saying we're not doing our jobs, the regulatory agencies, there's no supervision.
They fill in the vacuum.
They fill in the vacuum, like the executive. Executive overreach happens when there's congressional stagnation, when there's legislative gridlock. Same with the regulatory agencies. They, I can't tell you if I'm a farmer and you're a ranch hand and I'm not doing anything. How do I tell you to go out and do the things that I'm unwilling to do? The Congress needs to start doing their job and oversee these agencies to, again, guarantee domestic energy production. Until we have that, why do we even have a Congress? Why do we pay them, what is $1 billion a year or
whatever
more?
it is lately, it's too much.
Far too much. And I do want to say, too, the IRS is one more people criticize. Let me say this. Every piece of legislation, every tax policy was written by Congress. It wasn't written by the IRS, so you can point the finger all you want, but it's the legislature that writes those policies, and the IRS simply enforces. They're bureaucrats. So it's popular to say, I'll get rid of the IRS. Well, how about we get rid of all those deductions and all that the policy that they've written for special interests that don't serve the American people? My tax policies are pretty specific. Every single deduction ought to be to incentivize some kind of behavior, like domestic job production or some kind of domestic growth or increase in wages. And we give these deductions before we get the behavior. Let me be clear. That is as backwards as I can imagine. If you want Walmart to increase their wage for their entry-level employees, incentivize that through the tax code. If you want GE to buy their parts domestically, incentivize that through the tax code. So instead of letting GE offshore their jobs and giving them a deduction to do that, take away all the deductions and only give them a deduction when they increase how many employees they have, when they increase the pay of those employees, when they try innovative technologies that will actually build the American economy. I can't say enough that our tax code is written backwards because it's written by the wrong people. And if we can fix that, we can spur economic growth. And if we can do that, we can actually deal with the $19.5 trillion in debt that we face.
Well, Alan, we're out of time. Always fun to sit down and talk to people who are passionate about what this country is and what Kansas is and our place in it. Important to have this, so thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, as always, for having me.
I wish you good luck in your campaign, and thanks for being willing as a citizen, a fellow citizen here. Thanks for pitching your hat in the ring and having the courage of your convictions to go face that challenge. Well done.
I'll always try to live up to the expectation of a patriotic American who's willing to do what's necessary.
Folks, I'm Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Communications. This is Alan LaPolice. He's running for the big first seat as an independent in Congress. Standing behind me is Dwight David Eisenhower, the fellow who put Abilene on a map for the rest of eternity. So thank you for watching today. We know that you'll have a chance to meet Alan and the other candidates September 22nd at a Chamber of Commerce debate here in Abilene. Hope you're there to see it. Again, I'm Dennis Weiss. Have a great day.